All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So welcome to our roundtable, our last one for the month of March, ending on a high note with talking with our wonderful panelists today about game changers, women, and how. Hi. Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. That's okay. It happens once a day. Okay. Hi again, everyone. I'm super excited to share space with you all. Today, we're ending the month of March, Women's History Month, on a high note with talking with women and speaking with women who have really just become game changers in the field of housing. So I'm super excited to share space with you all today. Before we introduce our wonderful panelists, I'm excited to learn from them. I'm going to be taking a lot of notes. I want to share some updates with you all. And so if you haven't heard about the ACUHO-I stories, it's a podcast put on by ACUHO-I. I was listening to it while cleaning this weekend. It was a great podcast. So you can find that on any platform. Also, ACUHO-I is offering some virtual opportunities for us to engage and connect. And so the first one is the Mid-Level Leadership Institute. It's April 6th through 9th, and it's virtual. Next, they'll have their Small College and University Symposium, and I'm excited to see everything that they're pulling together for that one. That's going to be on April 21st, 2021. And then my favorite one that I'm looking forward to is the Live-In Symposium on April 28th, 2021. You can learn more by logging onto ACUHO-I and signing up and registering. I can't wait to sign up for the Live-In Symposium. And then last but certainly not least, we have our ACUHO-I ACE conference. And so it is June 22nd through the 24th. Again, it's virtual this year. And so please register by April 6th for early discounts and to get your team in there. Last but not least, we always have resources available for your continual growth and development. And so if you log on to ACUHO-I, there are online resources, just simply using your username and login. There are chats, there are posts that you can ask questions on. So again, these are all wonderful opportunities to take advantage of, log in to see some YouTube recordings as well. Just some quick reminders about today's conversation. This is a conversation, and so it's not a traditional webinar, and we really want to give folks the opportunity to connect and be a part of this session. We have some dynamic folks on this panel today, and so feel free to post some questions in the chat and engage with our panelists. And so if possible, if you can have your webcam open or on, so we can engage with each other and create that community, that would be great. And then questions and comments can also be shared in the chat. Before I move on to hand it off to our panelists, I just want to say thank you to our Women in Housing Network leadership team. We have Melinda, who will be hosting today, myself, Deanna Hughes, she'll be joining us in a few minutes, and then Star Longoria. So thank you, network. Melinda, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, thank you, Paige. Welcome, everyone. I am incredibly excited to be with this group of just phenomenal women and I get to have a conversation with all of you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them for some introductions. And we can just go in the order that you all are appearing on the screen if you are good with that. So tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Kennedy. I serve as Associate Vice President for Student Housing and Sustainability at the University of South Carolina. And I just have a long time history of involvement in ACUHO-I in a lot of different ways.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dee Allard, and I currently serve as the Executive Director for Housing and Residence Life here at Mississippi State University. I'm also pretty involved with ACUHO-I and ACUHO organizations.
Renee, I think you're muted.
There it goes. Hi, I am Renee Richard-Gons, and I serve as the Director of Communications and Administrative Services at Louisiana State University. Also involved with both ACUHO-I and also ACUHO.
Hey y'all, I'm Stephanie Carter. I'm the Director of Residence Life at Wake Forest University. I've been in my position since February 2017. Also involved with the ACUHO-I and especially in the CHO region. So I get to be in the great company of these women a whole lot.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gabe Perez. I'm an Assistant Vice President and Executive Director of Housing and Residence Life at the University of Virginia. My professional involvement started at CHO, and I'm a current past president of CHO. And my ACUHO-I involvement includes work on the executive board as well as the foundation board.
Good deal. Thank you, everyone. Today's roundtable, we have 8 questions that have been curated from folks within the Women in Housing Network, some themes around questions that people wanted to know about. And then we're hopeful that we'll have a little bit of time for any of you that would like to pop a question in the chat. If we're able to get to that, we will do so as well. So I'm going to jump right in, and because I know there's a lot of content and I want to make sure that each of the panelists get to share everything that they would like to share. So the very first question, I think, Stephanie, we're going to start out with you on this one, if you're good with that. What advice would you share with women who are relatively early in their career?
Yeah, so here's my disclaimer also. My son is on spring break this week and literally in the room behind me. So if you hear someone yelling, he's okay. I promise. I always have to tell folks. So my advice for women early on in their career, I would say soak up all the experiences that you can, right? I mean, most certainly this is not groundbreaking information for you, but I think the opportunity to get to know, obviously, not only the work that you are currently doing, you know, whether that's Res Life, whatever the case may be, but get to know what other folks are doing in your office and different other kind of functional areas, but other things that also may be of passion areas to you at the university, right? I mean, you can never learn too much from the actual work, and I think from the way you look at your professional development to kind of soak up those experiences. Clearly, as just people mentioned in their introduction, the involvement that we have in professional associations is a huge way to make an impact in our field. You know, obviously coming to webinars like this and just being involved is a way to get your name out there, get other people to kind of get to know who you are, get involved in committees, and just being an active member in our associations will truly help you. I know a lot of times for new professionals, I mean, granted, I absolutely want you to do your job and do your job well. But once you feel as though, okay, I've got my feet underneath me, how can I also branch out and be involved? As long as you were taking care of home, then I have no problem, especially, you know, as a supervisor, I have no problem if you're doing your job and doing it well, that you do other things or are involved in other ways, because I want this to be a well-rounded experience for you personally and professionally in the work that we are doing. So seek out opportunities, get involved everywhere you can, while you're still able to manage the actual role that you're doing and not take on too much that you're like, I feel like my job is literally working for ACUHO-I. Well, no, it's not. Like we're paying you here. I actually need you to do that piece first before you do anything else. So that's my kind of kick this off piece of advice.
Thank you. Gay, it looks like you've unmuted. What would you like to contribute?
I think I would just offer to enjoy the journey in your professional career, and not only learn everything that you can, but advocate for yourself with your supervisors. One of the things, I know this is another question, but one of the things that as I moved up that I was not really prepared for and had to learn on the fly is working in facilities management. And so the opportunities at different positions that allowed that, but you know, you have to advocate to say, hey, I'd like to attend this meeting, or I'd like to be a part of this project, because that's where you're going to get the practical skills. And don't, also, if you're supervisor, and Dee can tell you that I used to really challenge the folks who worked for me to grow, to set themselves up for success in the next step.
Good. Go ahead, Kirsten. Just hop on in.
Real quick, I'd like to go back to something that Stephanie talked about doing your job well. And I think, did you say front yard, backyard? What did you say? Something along those lines. So the year that I did the Senior Housing Officers Institute, that actually was something that we talked about in terms of your front yard sort of being your outward facing professional organization involvement, and your backyard being what's happening on your home campus. And you can't have a pristine front porch while your backyard's a dumpster fire, because you'll lose the credibility of the folks at home. So it's a real delicate balance. And I would add, if you're a woman with a family, you have a side yard too, you have to attend to. And there are all three of those pieces that you have to try to balance and manage so that none of them are on fire, but nobody's going to call code enforcement on you either for anything happening around your house.
Good deal. Thank you. I like that analogy of the front yard, backyard. When you're thinking about all of you, your time in housing, what is the biggest shift that you have seen in our profession? And maybe also kind of where do you see us going then moving forward? Let's try, Gay, you want to tackle that one first? Sure.
Of course you start with me on this one. I think it's really safe to say that this pandemic has changed the face, not necessarily of institutions of higher education, but the residential housing program. I think it has pointed out some of the things that we no longer need to do, that we always thought we may need to do it because we've always done it this way. I think it's going to be quite exciting in the next couple of years to see how we bounce back better after the pandemic. Housing programs have been the backbone of responding to the pandemic, in my opinion. Because without us, we could not have closed residence halls within 3 days. We could not have done a pack and store option or really have in-person residential students, even though their academic career was virtual this year without the housing programs. I do think we're going to see shifts in the types of positions, the skill sets that we are going to need moving forward. And I yield to my other colleagues.
Renee, what are your thoughts maybe on that?
I think, and this, I guess, has to go with the generational changes that occur. I think back when I was an RA, I think back when I was a living staff member, and the mentality, and I think there's been a very healthy shift towards a more well-rounded housing professional. I think we were, and don't get me wrong, I know this still exists to some degree, but I think we were rewarded in my early days for giving everything and all of our time and working late and burning the candle at both ends. Those were the things we were rewarded for. And there's a lot more emphasis now on having a life outside. I mean, all of our friends were all of the people that we worked with, and and so I think we do a better job of being healthy people. We used to preach, you have to be healthy in order to be, to show your students that, but we weren't living that lifestyle, I don't think, as well as we do now. At least I think, I'm not the new professional, but I feel like at least, hopefully we're practicing what we preach. We're doing a much better job of recognizing and teaching it. And so I think I really have seen that shift in my 25 years. So.
Yeah, that was going to be honestly, that was my response too. I have to catch myself now kind of as we have hired new professionals on, when people are like, listen, after 5 o'clock, I don't answer emails, or, I don't even have my work email on my phone. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, there's parts of me that are like, how does that work? Like, it's such a weird thing that I have to catch myself and just be like, yeah, like, this is what you want. I want people who will actually have a life outside of this job, but it's been so ingrained in me for so long that this is the work, and the work doesn't stop, and you respond to things quickly because that's just how you've been trained. So as Renee said, it's been a good change. It's just sometimes hard, for me professionally to be like, okay, yeah, like, we actually want to support this. This is a good thing. But I have to shake my own brain of saying, just stop it. It's okay if people don't answer email after 5 o'clock. Like, go do things.
I would say along those same lines, did I interrupt somebody? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I would say along those same lines with us as individuals, thinking about self-care more and putting it into practice, I'd say our students and staff members are in need of more help. Mental health has definitely gone through the roof in the last 20 years. And so I'm seeing that increasing even through the professional staff, even my mid-managers. And so that is definitely escalating. So making that a priority, I think, is another component that we are working towards being more well-rounded as a profession. And one other thing, especially with this year of COVID, I would say teamwork, flexibility, adaptability is critical. I think that's where we were as housing professionals before. I see it even more as we go into this world of uncertainty and unknowns, and how do we pivot and turn on a dime when we have to remove our students, our staff members, make sure that we're setting up procedures in our housing system.
I'll add on to the end of that. I think our work has gotten more difficult over the years. Say when I first started, roommate disagreements were pretty simplistic. Like who was going to get which bed, and somebody was leaving the window open or their radio was on or whatever the thing was. And the kinds of things that RAs are asked to handle now, it's just unbelievable. It's one parent wanting the roommate to do a suicide watch on their kiddo. Like those kinds of the things that our student staff in particular are handling is just phenomenal and so much more complex and difficult than it was 20 years ago, I would say. Because of that, the professional live-in staff feel that as well. And I think that's part of what contributes to this mental health spike that we've seen, because it's secondary trauma, essentially, when, listening to people who've been sexually assaulted, like the problems are, maybe the problems have always existed and we didn't know, and students weren't telling us about them. But now that we know, I just really feel like the job is more difficult than it's ever been.
Great, thank you all. Thank you all for sharing that. And the next question, I think, opens the door for everybody to be a little bit vulnerable, right? So often there's this perception of perfection of women that have reached where you each have in your role within your professional life. And so I'm wondering if you could maybe share a misstep that you have made and how you recovered from that. How about Renee? Do you want to go first?
Linda, we got a misstep and you automatically think Renee. For me, I don't know if I want to call it a misstep, but it was just a lesson well learned. So I came to LSU in 2004 in my current position with the plan to come here just to work on a PhD. This was a good job opportunity and I could work on my PhD, and then I was going to get the heck out. Like as soon as that sucker was done, I was gone, right? And I was also in the process of trying to start a family, but I'd been in that process for about a decade. I had some fertility issues along the way. And so my husband and I sat down and said, there's things in your life you can control and things that you can't control. And let's take care of the things we can take care of right now. So the PhD was there. I was nearing 40, I guess, at that point. And I thought, I'm going to turn 40 and I'm not going to have a baby or a PhD, and I'm going to be really mad at myself. So came to LSU with those goals. And I jumped right in and went straight through and was at the point of, I finished my coursework. I was a candidate. And and then that dream of becoming a mom happened. And that slowed me down a little bit. And then not long after that dream of becoming a mom happened, some other things happened that resulted in my marriage dissolving. And so that was a big moment for me to like step back and realize that we teach everybody about juggling and realizing which balls are rubber and which ones are glass. And sadly for me, the balls that were rubber were my dissertation at that point. I found myself after over a decade of longing, being a married woman wanting to be a mom, I found myself in an interesting position of now being a single mom. And not just that, but as crazy would happen, I was also pregnant with number 2 as I was going through my divorce. And so I was not just a single mom, I was about to be a single mom of 2 very young children. And so writing a dissertation just wasn't gonna be that. And so I learned the hard way, the lessons. And so I tell people regularly, I don't even know at this point in my life that a PhD is a need, but for me it is, because I started that sucker and I never finished it. And I have to finish it, even if it doesn't do anything for me professionally. I can't have any more dreams about being in finals and realizing I didn't go to class all semester or whatever. I know that those are all about that unfinished business. And so my children are now 14 and 10, and I have some stepchildren now as well. And they're a little bit older, and I think I can pick it back up. And so I just was talking to my director the other day about, I have to start again because I waited so long. I have to start again, but I have to do that for me. I'm getting close to a retirement age. I may not need it, but I do. I need it for me. So those are the lessons I've learned. Things don't happen in the timing that we think they're going to happen. They happen when they're supposed to happen, and you just got to run with it. So.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Renee. I remember, right, when you were going through that, and thank you for sharing that in this space. And you have 2 beautiful boys, and yeah, absolutely. And you'll get that. I'll be happy to call you doctor. So who else maybe would like to go? Go ahead, Gabe.
Sure. I would like to say that, as a woman in housing and residence life, I think some of the main missteps that I have made was based in predominantly working in the male-dominated facilities area. So trying to establish credibility, trying to advocate for the students, I have been, my passion has been turned against me. And that was a hard lesson to learn. And so I would just kind of encourage you, because it's a delicate balance that we have, because we're at a very high level in our field, but there's always a level kind of above us at the institution, and really trying to establish that credibility is very important. And so I think that would be something that I had to learn and adjust how I advocate.
That's really powerful. Thank you, Gay. And I want to, Stephanie, I know you have to leave us soon, so I wanted to give you the ability to share before you had to hop off if you wanted to.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of, of all the many missteps I've probably made, or what just seems appropriate. But what I will say, I will actually jump to the next question that is coming up about probably my proudest moment before I have to step off. And I do apologize for having to leave early. I will say for me, as I mentioned, I've been at Wake since 2017. So this is obviously my first director role. And as someone who has basically grown up in this field, right, from being an RA, kind of on up the steps and everything else, I think back to a time, when I was an RA, literally, working for a supervisor who told me I would never make it in this field, because I didn't quite have the personality, right? I mean, right, old school kind of res life thinking where everybody is just bubbly and excited all the time, like you were literally that cheerleader. That is just not, I mean, yeah, right. I think we can all pull it out. I'm an introvert, like that is to my core. But, we can all pull out that extrovertedness and that nature when it needs to be done. But I often think back on those moments of just how sometimes, for whatever reason, whether it was, because I was a woman, because I was whatever, right? I think back on those moments of the times when people have tried to kind of say, hey, you're not ready for this, or this isn't for you. And it's like, well, you have to keep pushing through the barriers that are going to be in your way, right? At all times, because they will come. We deal with them differently, all different, what that looks like, but, honestly, one of my proudest moments outside of, the personal piece of being a mom and everything else is getting my doctorate. I mean, much like Renee, like it was something I needed to do for me. I mean, I tell anybody, even to this today, at this point, I have enough professional experience to get jobs, without having a doctorate. I mean, ones don't say, necessary, but I have enough professional experience to do that. But I just didn't want any other reasons for someone to say you were not qualified for this role. So to me, it was about making that accomplishment and getting that done and saying, listen, now you may not choose me, I get it, but you can't say that I don't have the experience and I don't have the education, I don't have all of this, because I do. I check all those boxes. So that was a proud experience for me, but also getting the role that I'm in now. And, for someone who, even when I was an RA, didn't think about that. I mean, coming here and obviously figuring out what the next step is eventually going to be in the future, it's been quite the journey for me as someone who truly fell into this work, right? I just wanted to be an RA because I got a room to myself and a discount. Here we go. So it has kind of kept working. Also for the free t-shirts and pizza, which this year, COVID has taken the pizza away. That's a thing. So, to me, it's just that. But I have like a lot of obviously proud moments and just moments. And as I said, I hate to kind of sneak off, but this has been amazing. And I appreciate always being in a company of great women who are doing great things. I look up to so many people on this. I mean, I used to work for Kirsten when I was in South Carolina. So there's a lot of legacy that's kind of going on here and just kind of this work. So thank you all.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I will tell you that when you spoke at ACUHO-I, like we still in our staff tell each other, don't be somebody's burpee.
Yeah. I appreciate that. For folks who, whether you follow me on social media or not, I really do burpees every day, legitimately. It's a thing. I don't recommend it, but I don't know what it is at this point. It's just a thing that apparently needs to happen. So people at my gym kind of hate me, but I love it. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. Good. Well, I think that's a good segue to that next question. What moment in your career are you most proud? Kirsten, you want to hop in there?
That's a hard one. I've done a lot of things. I've got a book I edited and wrote, and getting my doctorate was surely a highlight. Serving on the ACUHO-I executive board. For a while, not that I wasn't permitted to teach, like I did something bad here, but teaching wasn't in the cards for me in the grad program. And so ACUHO-I provided that outlet for me through RELI and HTI, Senior Housing Officers Institute. I think what I'm most proud of is being able to balance as well as I did, having a husband, 2 children, a full-time job, and also being part of those professional organizations. And we don't have anything on here about balance necessarily, but not every day is a perfect balance. Like you can't, if you're looking at a 3-legged stool, not all legs are going to be equal. And all the time, one leg is going to have more of the weight on it than the other. And so the example I give is, the day that my son got hit in the face with a hockey stick after he was told not to play garage hockey. And so I was meeting that other mom at the emergency room for stitches and then almost passed out in the room, but that's a different story. Like I wasn't in balance that day, right? Work took a back seat. And, another time we had a mold incident that went on for weeks. And I was really committed to talking to all of the parents who wanted to talk to me about it whenever they wanted to talk. And so I was here until 6 or 7, sometimes 8 at night for a really long period of time, 4 or 5 weeks. And I was not in balance then either. My hope is that over time, it's roughly balanced. And I always feel like the institution's getting their money out of me, right? Like I don't feel like they're getting cheated in any way. But I'm very fortunate to have a really supportive partner who helped me pull that off. I'm not sure that without him, I could have done it.
How about from our other panelists? I know that sometimes it's a tough question, but this is an opportunity to share something.
And I would add, I agree with everything that Kirsten said, because, she's my idol. Because balancing family is very difficult and challenging. And when my children were young, I made a conscious effort to spend my time with them versus getting a PhD. And I was okay with that because at that point in your career, you're in a entry-level position. You don't have the financial resources. You know, my husband was in newspapers and we were working at Wake Forest. And so I had a faculty apartment that I didn't have to pay for. And then you would have thought that moving to Cary, North Carolina and actually purchasing a house, that my husband was like, oh no, I have to have everything, you know, that can fit in my car. I'm like, we have a kid now, and one was on the way. So I think that is important. But some of the proudest moments in my work has always been to see the people that I work with progress and succeed. And not all of them stay in housing, but helping them find their path in life and what they're passionate about has been some of my proudest moments.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Gabe. I was thinking, I mean, several things come to mind. But most recently, I had to make a pretty big decision. So my boss, who I've had for 13 years and enjoyed and really loved working for, decided to retire. And I think everyone expected me to apply for his position. I have the years of experience. I have the education that was required. I have all of those boxes checked that Stephanie talked about. And so I had to really stop and take some time to think about if that's what I wanted, you know, right then. Of course, also we were in the middle of a pandemic, so that changed the dynamic a little too. Like, was I ready to take on the challenge of a department this size in the middle of a pandemic, in a budget crisis because of the pandemic, you know, and all of those things. And because I did get that later start, I had to make the decision that my kids are I'm still very involved. They're not grown. They're still very involved in sports. They're still very involved. I still have to pick them up from after school programs. I'm a mom first. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a mom first. My job is very, very important to me, but I will never let my kids sacrifice a moment, you know, because they understand sometimes they have to wait a little bit longer because mom has something that she has to do for work, but they're not going to have to sacrifice something because of my job. And so I made the decision not to go for that position. And it was interesting to watch the resumes come in and know that I had more experience and more education than most of the ones that were coming in. So I was going to report to somebody, but I accepted that because I knew this is where I am right now in this time. And somebody asked me how I felt about, you know, my boss is much younger than me now and has less experience and, you know, and different things in the resume, but, you know, I'm okay with that. I think the moments that watching a former grad student who I had a role in his life become the director of ACPA, right? To watch one of my student workers become a vice president at a small school in Georgia recently. You know, I'm watching people who I've really impacted and who still call me for advice and stuff, make big moves and big decisions. And I feel like I kind of own a part of them. So I don't have to be the AVP at LSU to feel like I've made a big impact. I've made a big impact because I've had an impact on these lives that are out there doing crazy, great things. And so am I in my role as a director at LSU. I still am fulfilled in this position and I'm okay with that. And so that's kind of a proud moment for me when I had that aha moment in that soul-searching time. So.
Well, I am one of those professionals that am still, I think my significant other for life, however, don't have the kids and the family that I had wished for. But within my career, you know, when I turned 40, that's when I realized I need to work on this doctorate. A lot of the things that Stephanie and Renee mentioned about needing to go for that aspect of my life, I decided to do that. And in the midst of all that and finishing the proposal phase of my dissertation, I decided to do a job search and move I don't recommend that, but I was able to finish that doctorate. And so that is probably one of the proudest moments. That was a crazy year. I thought 2019 was my crazy year, finishing a doctorate, finding my significant other, and finishing up a conference. I was CHO conference chair at that time. And I realized that I need to figure out balance and what that means for me. And that looks different for everybody. I think Kirsten said it really on point about the three-legged stool. Just everything teeters one way or another. When one area gets right, something else falls off. And so I'm having to still learn that as a professional in a lot of different ways, and be okay for taking time for self and my partner. Oftentimes that singleton tends to feel obligated to take on the extra or do more as a result. And it's okay to say no and figure that out for yourself and what you need and taking that time. So the doctor is definitely something I'm proud of, but also working with these fabulous women. I've had the pleasure of working with everybody in some capacity on this panel. Gabe being my supervisor for some time and taught me so much in that role. And seeing my students grow and get awards and recognized in different ways, definitely where I get my charge and my, it's kind of like my kids in some ways, even though I don't have children. It's that great opportunity to see where I can contribute to others.
Great. Thank you all very, very much. Could you talk with us about maybe a skill that you needed to develop that you never would have thought was something, something you just weren't expecting that you would need to know or learn? Maybe, I'm trying to think who hasn't gone first yet. I think Dee, I don't think I've made you go first.
No, you haven't. And I was hoping as I finished last that I'd be able to scoot along with that. This is a hard one for me. I guess I'm a person who's very much a thinker and a doer. And so the political astuteness of the role has definitely been an area that I have continued to have to evolve and grow in, to make connections with other departments than my own. Do well within the Division of Student Affairs. It's those academic campus services, those other departments that I tend to struggle with a little bit, having to get out of my comfort zone and into theirs. And so that political awareness is something I continue to learn and grow in. And public speaking is another one. I should have known better, because the different opportunities I've had, there are some opportunity for public speaking, but that is not a strength of mine or a passion of mine. And it continues to evolve when it comes to retirements and end of the year celebrations and all the things. And although I keep tapping others to do various roles, that keeps following me. So I know that sounds like a weird skill set, but public speaking, just to convey the message, the vision, get people inspired. Like I said, I'm a thinker and a doer, executor. And so it's an interesting role for me. So those are the two that I'd mention.
I would say for me, the biggest skill that I never thought I'd have to do is to move somebody along for a performance thing or an organizational shift. So those are some very difficult conversations. And it starts early in your career when you're supervising grads or RAs directly. And it just gets harder and more nuanced as you move up in the organization. But I would say that if you are good at that, and meaning good is meaning you can make a lemonade out of a really lemon situation, but even more so is being able to coach the folks who report to you to be able to do it, because people have a very hard time with accountability. And if you work in a public institution, the documentation that's needed, it's often hard for a supervisor to be able to articulate what it is that is problematic in somebody's performance or behavior or decision making. So I would say that was a skill that I acquired along the way, but it was not something I trained for, educated for, or anything like that.
Mine wasn't something that I didn't expect to have to do. It was something I didn't expect to be so difficult for me. And so I think it kind of goes along with that political stuff that Dee mentioned. I'm a woo by nature. And so I love to connect. I mean, connections are my favorite. I love, even though I rarely get to interact with RAs, I make sure that I get to be at some setting and get to know each one, get to know what they want and find out what our connection points are every year, which has been very difficult this year because of COVID. So when someone invites me to coffee, that's exciting for me because that's an opportunity to sit and talk. But I guess the higher I've gone, I hate that terminology, but the deeper I've gone into the field, the more I've realized that sometimes those coffees aren't what they seem. And I have a very difficult time sometimes accepting invitations that I know have agendas behind them. I would much rather sit down and be able to make a connection with you than sit down because you want something from me or you want to work an angle or get information or whatever it might be. And recently I've been invited to a couple coffees that I really wanted to turn down. And so I have a mentor, and I think it's very important that I'll talk those things through with, and she would probably be embarrassed that I'm saying it, but Lorinda Kerhut is my person. That's who I call. That's who I ask. Like, what do I do? She walked me through the whole discussion about whether or not I should apply for this position. And so recently this coffee, I just knew it was the last thing I wanted to do. It was somebody in our enrollment management area that I knew exactly what it was about. And so she said, it does not going to this coffee hurt anybody other than you. And absolutely it does. It hurts my entire area. And so that's one of those things that I just have to like swallow and say, okay, I'm going to go do this thing, and it seems crazy. I'm very much an extrovert and I'm very much a connections person. And I actually on a personal level don't mind this person, but it didn't feel genuine to me because I knew exactly what the agenda was behind it. That it was something that I needed to do so that my area could benefit from it. My department could benefit from it. And so for me, it was very weird to have to drag myself out. Like I see my introverted husband have to drag himself out to a dinner or whatever, and I'm loving it, but that's what it felt like for me in that moment because it didn't feel genuine or real. And so it was an interesting, I guess, moment for me.
That's good. Thank you all for sharing. Kirsten, do you want to add anything? Okay. So the next question that we have, and it's maybe along similar lines, but has your career path changed maybe from what you thought it was going to be when you set out? And if so, how? And what were those decision-making points for you along the way?
Well, I'll start this one, Linda. You don't have to call me out. I actually didn't start out in student affairs, I didn't think. I got my bachelor's in business. I think a lot of you know, I played collegiate softball. I transferred my junior year, which I would not advise. I transferred 96 credits, which I don't even think you can do anymore. And I had to sit out a year, so I played my graduate school year. So I got my master's just so that I could finish out my eligibility, and I got an assistantship in residence life because the woman before me who did that, she had an assistantship in residence life, and it was all about the business kinds of things. I guess germane to the story is my dad's in the field, and so they recognized his name from his publications. And so I kind of think they were excited to have me because of my last name. And then very quickly that became a liability because they understood that maybe I knew more than they thought I did just because my dad worked in res life and student affairs and that kind of thing. So And I wrote in the chat, they told me I would never be a success in housing because I hadn't been an RA, but I was told that at every turn. I really should have left earlier, but I didn't have enough confidence to leave. It's sort of like being in an abusive relationship. It was like, not only shouldn't you apply, like you're lucky we keep you around here kind of thing. That's what I was feeling. So I finally ended up going to NASPA with my dad because he was winning an award and he had a writing partner and he introduced me to her and he said, well, tell her about what's happening here. And what she said to me was, look, you have great skills. You're just at a place that doesn't appreciate them. And there are places who appreciate what you have to offer. So I was in an all-out job search and I was underemployed too, right? So it wasn't just this grad assistantship. I worked there because I was too afraid to interview, honestly. But they kept telling me I wasn't really a housing professional and I wasn't really a student affairs person because I had this business background. They thought I didn't have any people skills, which I thought was wrong, but they had pegged me in that hole. And when I went to Missouri, at University of Missouri as associate director for business operations, where all the things I was doing at my last institution, I was supervising people who had staffs who did those things. So it was quite a leap. And I still didn't identify as student affairs. In fact, about 3 years after I got to Missouri, I was interviewing at Citibank to go into their leadership development program. And I thought, well, if I don't go into that, then I'm going to come back and do a PhD. Really? Those are the two things? Like get out of student affairs or like go all in? And so the Citibank thing was not a good match for me. And so I got my doctorate. But it took a long time for me to think I even belonged in student affairs. And I had a really long period of time where I just felt professionally lost. I mean, in that period, it was at Bloomsburg University, which is how I know Pete, who's Renee's new AVP. It was in that period where like I started taking classes to be a business education teacher. Like I was trying to do anything to find my identity. And so for that reason, my career stalled. I mean, it was in a stall for the first 9 years, in my opinion, because I was just trying to figure out what do I want to do and how do I find my professional identity. And it was killing me because I just felt like there was a piece not quite there, right? Like I felt like I was a decent wife, I was a good daughter, those kinds of things, but that career piece was really bothering me. So I hope that answers the question. I guess I would start out by saying, I don't really know what the career path was. I just felt really lost and wandering around. But then once I found it, then I felt like once I got my footing, then I was kind of on a jetpack in a way and just really soaking everything up and wanting to do everything that I could do and learn everything I could learn and get out of this, business ops box that people had put me in, which is interesting now because I get calls that are like, hey, you're great at facilities. You're a woman who knows about facilities. Can you be in our panel? I'm like, well, that's hilarious. And then someone else will be like, well, could you talk on programming? Sure. And so depending on how you know me, you think I have different skill sets, which is just fine with me. I'll leave it there. The end about the author.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think any of us ever started college thinking that we were going to go through housing, right? Because there's not even, maybe there is now. I've heard people talk about it, but there wasn't a bachelor's degree in student affairs, right? So so I thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought I was going to be a teacher for deaf students. And I thought that from a very early age. I have two deaf aunts who took me to see Children of a Lesser God when I was young. And I fell in love with the whole idea of being a teacher for deaf students. And I was in love with it. And all through college, I was in love with it. I was the one everybody wanted to help tutor because I knew like it was my path. And during my student teaching experience, I was like, wow, this is not my path. And it took that long. It took me a really long time to realize that. And I did know I wanted to do student affairs immediately, but I thought I wanted to be a dean of students. I was an RA. I did a lot of housing things as a student, but I did a lot of other things too, like activities. And I was not Greek. I'm one of the few people I think I know that weren't, but I did a lot of the other stuff. And so that's what I wanted to be. And I got my first job in housing because, let's face it, back in those days, it was the only job that paid well enough not salary, but you didn't have to like pay for an apartment and all that other stuff, because we made about $15,000 as a starting student affairs professional. And so if you were going to make it, then you had to have a job that actually included housing and a meal plan, or you weren't going to survive. And so that was just going to be my temporary thing, getting the experience. And I signed up, like all of the good advice for a new professional, for every opportunity that I could. I worked with the facility side in our housing office while I was at Appalachian State with Dee. I signed up and worked with, I worked at Greek life because I had not been Greek, so I wanted to get some of that experience too. I signed up to work with the ACUHO-I while at App State. I did a lot of extra, worked at a small school so I could wear all the hats. So I got some operations experience and all of those things. But I just absolutely knew I wasn't going to stay in housing. And it wasn't actually until I came to LSU and started working on my PhD that I actually did a practicum in the Dean of Students office and realized that there was no way in the world I was ever going to be a Dean of Students. I worked with Casey White. If anybody knows Casey, she's an incredible, incredible person. And she let me get the full experience because she wanted me to know what I was signing up for. And so I got to work all those late nights with the SG, and I got to make all those phone calls when a student passed away. I got to, and wow, it was just really heavy work. And so that was my aha moment that I really was a housing person, that I was really happy. Like I would tell people all the time, I wasn't sure that I was always going to do housing. And that's when I really invested and went all in housing, I guess, when I realized that I wasn't going to be a Dean of Students. Coming to LSU, I actually had been a director of education. And so I'd come up through that res ed side and was all about it, and clearly have the personality of a res ed person, I'm told quite often. But I got into this biz ops side because it was going to be a lot easier to work on my PhD. And just like my time in Louisiana was going to be short, so was my time in operations. And here I am 16 years later, still working in the operations administrative side of things. It is not, I've done a couple of interim gigs while here at LSU for Res Ed while we've had someone leave and we're filling the positions, and I always get that energy and excitement when I get to do it. And then I'm always really happy to hand the keys over to whoever we hire, because I'm old enough now that I don't appreciate the late nights and I don't appreciate the calls in the middle of the night and all of those things. So I, in a lot of ways, people, I've had this conversation with people when I was having this soul searching moment. In a lot of ways, I could retire from my job right now and feel fulfilled, the job that I'm in. I'm a director. I'm not an executive director. I'm not an AVP. I could retire and feel fulfilled, which is surprising to me because I never would have thought that many years back. I was headed towards the top, but I feel very fulfilled in that. So, but it took me a while to get there, and I've really enjoyed the conversations in those faculty moments. I did both RELI and NHTI. And I've actually coached people out of housing in those moments, surprisingly enough. I've had someone in my RELI group who was really questioning whether or not they were a housing person and really identified that they weren't in that moment. And I'm okay with that because you need to find where you belong. And same thing with NHTI. I've had some people that are still going really strong, but I've had some people who were questioning it and now they're not doing it. And I was very much a coach for that. Not everybody's built for this work. But here I am.
And we are glad that you are here. And we are running up on our time today. I think this could have easily been an hour and a half, and we would have more than filled the time with this wealth of wisdom from these folks. And I hope that folks have heard some really good nuggets. I know that I have, things from give yourself some grace when it comes to balance. It's not always going to be perfect, that you've got to find your own path. It's okay to misstep. It's how you recover. That finding a mentor at every part of your career to be able to bounce things off of is critical. And I think if I could put a theme on all of this, is that something being difficult and something being beautiful are not mutually exclusive. right? And that the work that we get to do is challenging for certain, but so worth it. And I have just enjoyed this time with all of you. And I think we have one more minute. If there's something that any of our panelists are just really wanting to say, or that maybe you didn't get a chance to, I'm so grateful to each of you for spending this time. It's been so good to connect. And to all of you who joined us, thank you for that as well.
I want to leave people with one last word, and that is, as much as you can, give women a hand up and lift each other up. There are lots of women around who consciously or unconsciously work against the women who they work with, who work for them. And don't be one of those people. Be one of the people that people look up to because you've treated them right, given them opportunities to grow and develop and to become great in the field. And for me, if I leave you with nothing else, please take that back with you. Be the woman that you aspire, look at the woman you aspire to be and take the steps to get there without trampling on others.
Thank you, Kirsten. That's a beautiful way to end this. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon and that, things line out for you. Please get involved in the Women in Housing Network and ACUHO-I. This panel is like the varsity team for CHO. So if that's your reason, get in there and get involved. Thank you all so very, very much. Have a great day.